Well, welcome to the BNI Effect, the home of amazing conversations with Brisbane BNI members, sharing tips on how you can get the most out of your BNI membership. I'm Tony Meredith, and ordinarily I'm a business coach, but today I'm your host and fellow BNI member, bringing you yet another exciting interview with a Brisbane BNI member. This episode is number 49, and today's guest is Tiffany English. Tiffany, hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm really good, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Let's swing straight into it and let's get a
Okay.
bit of a brief overview about you, your business, and the services you provide.
Yeah, awesome. So Tiffany English, you've defined me well. Thank you. I currently own a company called Access Offshoring, which we founded a few years ago. The whole purpose of Access Offshoring is connecting businesses, mostly in Australia, with Philippines-based talent. We have a very strong corporate focus, so we work with a lot of larger companies where we place multiple roles, generally back office, but also a lot of roles from engineers, marketers, processors, and everything in between. And we have a Philippines-based entity so that everything is done compliantly, and Aussie businesses know that everything is above board and on the right page for both Australia and the Philippines.
Yeah, great. And so you've been in that business for a couple of years. What
I have.
prompted getting into that business, Tiffany?
My background is in business improvement and a lot of turnarounds. So I spent a lot of my career in small businesses right up to publicly listed companies doing full turnarounds. And every single time I walked into a business, it was all about people and software. And so I had a software consulting business for a number of years, in fact, and started building my own offshore teams in that, but also for the many years prior. So I think the first time I hired a Filipino was probably 16 years ago. And so in that consulting business, as we were building our own team, I had a lot of clients say to me, Tiff, can you just build my team while you're doing it? And before too long, I said, all right, it's time to move on from consulting and focus on scaling this.
Well, I think there's a huge demand for Tiffany because, I mean, in my day job as a business coach, people are often saying, Tony, I can't do that because I didn't have enough time, and
Mm.
so all of a sudden you've got a service through your team where you can now help plug some of those gaps where time is an issue for those small to medium business owners.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for us as well, I mean, there's lots of us is the reality. You've got to make sure that they're compliant from a Philippines company perspective. But one thing that I've noticed in this space, and I think it's because I have worked and get got the most out of people for my entire career, is it's very easy to find talent in the Philippines. I mean, there's 119 million people in the Philippines, right? So even if I'm pulling the top 5%, Tony, that's still the whole of Queensland's population I got access to, right? And so when you look at it from a numbers game, it's easy. It's very easy to find talent. But one thing that people don't focus on is actually how do I build high performing Filipino teams? And that's where we dive in. And so all of the time we spend with our clients is to go, okay, you've got some team members offshore, that's great. But actually, how do you take them from a mediocre person who's just back office support to leave to, relieve you of a few hours to actually someone who's effectively running your business? So that's where we spend a lot of our time now and really start to differ as an offshore recruitment company.
Well, I mean, that's a massive point of difference. So
Yeah.
congratulations to you. Um, how and when were you introduced to BNI, Tiffany?
I read this and I thought, oh, that's pulling on some memory strings. I think it was Lisa Gill, actually, who,
Right.
yeah, runs one of the BNI regions in Brisbane or outside of Brisbane.
Yep.
She and I was actually part of one of her chapters for quite some time, well, just shy of a year probably. And it was a lunchtime chapter, which I loved the concept of. And I loved the idea that I could eat lunch, but it was killing my productivity. so, um, so I started to look for another chapter, but absolutely got so much value out of Lisa and the chapters that she's running and loved it. And so she was probably the one that went, actually, BNI can work for you. Let's give it a go.
Mm.
And so that's, I think, how it all unraveled.
So how long ago was that, Tiffany?
It was
Just roughly.
probably about 2020.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was before you started this current business or around.
Good. It was probably around about the same time,
Right.
actually. It was, yeah, it
Okay.
might have been even 2020. It would have been 2020 then, Tony, because that's when AO was founded. And I was doing it on the side of Modus Operandi, the consulting business I had at the
Yes.
time. So yeah, I went in to kind of push access offshoring and I've learned a heap about obviously our clientele, our perfect clientele, the business, what I want the business to become in the midst of all of that as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And so when you first went along to BNI, what was it about that first meeting that sort of drew you in, Tiffany?
Well, I think at that point when we were very much startup in the early
Mm.
stages, being around people who are in a similar boat to you is really important. It can be a lonely game. Everyone talks about that, right? And so if you're surrounding yourself with people that are trying to achieve the same things as you, but I think the most important thing is that you're in a room with people that are all helping you succeed.
Mm.
And that's the BNI model, right? How can I, that whole give as gain concept, how can I continue to give so that it helps someone else in the group? And that really just worked alongside my core values, definitely.
Fantastic. And so
Mm.
how has being part of a BNI chapter influenced your approach to networking?
It's consistent. I think consistency is something that I've always taken very strongly to in all that I do, and BNI definitely is that, right? For those that don't know, it's a weekly commitment, and you've got to go, and you get slapped if you don't go. And I'm the president right now, Tony, so I'm doing the slapping.
You're slapping. Okay.
So I think it's very much commitment, but it is also the ability to be in a room with people that you've somewhat selected. So I think, and I might be jumping a bit, but one of the most important things for me when I was selecting the chapter for a second time was who are these people, and who are their clients,
Mhm.
and do they align with the strategy that I have for Access Offshoring?
Mm.
So that is absolutely, it's not just how do I network, how do I do that effectively, but how do I build really solid relationships with people that are working in the same space that I am.
Yeah, like-minded. And I mean, it's interesting, right? So BNI, being a franchise, it's global, but yet each individual chapter is run by people. And
Yep,
so even though you've got a framework, the ops manuals, all those things that we should be adhering to, you've still got the nuances of having people responsible for each chapter. And every chapter that I go to just has a different vibe, a different culture about it. And I would imagine that's been your experience as well.
absolutely. And I love our group. I've had so much value out of it. And for me, when I walked in, I wanted to be in a room with people that were further along than me, that have done better, that I could learn from, and that was absolutely one of my non-negotiables. And can very comfortably say my group has done that. So I'm a bit biased, but I think I've got the best group in Brisbane.
Oh, terrific. That's great. And now that you're the president, so just talk me through that. So how are you, what are the responsibilities of the
Mm.
role of a president and how are you finding taking on that role?
Yeah, so most importantly is to make sure that the meeting runs smoothly and on time. That is like absolutely the most important part. But for me, I took the role seriously from a perspective of how do I make sure everybody gets the value that they want out of this group? And the definition of value or success for every single member is slightly different. And don't get me wrong, there's certainly a monetary component that people are chasing, and that happens naturally. But I decided that if I could really dig down and understand the motivators and the overall definition of success for each of these individual people, then I was in a really strong position to help them get there. And over and above that, as we build the group, how do I make sure that we're bringing in the right people that not only add value to the existing members, but that I can ensure we add value to them? And so that's what I see as my role is as we grow this chapter, how do I make sure that the people in the group are the right people and that I protect that culture like you would in any business, through and through? And also how do I obviously assume success in our group? And so for us, we've the chapter alone, it's a very established chapter. It's 2011 I think was when it started, so well before I'd even been exposed to BNI. And there's a lot of founding members still in the group, which is can be daunting for someone to walk in and particularly take over from a president perspective. But what that means is that the success of the group very much has been about money, and we're doing a significant amount of money from a thank you for closed business perspective. And now what we've been working on in the last 3 or 4 months is let's pick up everything else, the things that help us to get there, because we have there's an element that we everyone knows each other and we're all mates, which is great. But how do we make sure that as we bring in new members, we go back to the core of this BNI foundation and focus on the other elements that also really make a significant difference, and in turn, obviously, create more money in the bank account. So that's our focus, and that's probably what I'm doing from it. What I'm trying to do, Tony. Ask me again at the end of my term, will you? See how successful I've been.
I was going to say we'll come back. So we're recording this, and B, we'll come back,
Yeah, yeah.
Tiffany, for a "Where Are They Now" episode.
Where are
Hey,
they now? Yeah. Oh gosh, that's scary. Yeah, because like you say,
so,
it's all people, right?
it
You're
is
trying
all
to move
good.
people.
So how do you then measure success in BNI for yourself and your business?
From our perspective, it's certainly about as I said before, I would needed to be in the right room with the right people, and that is absolutely something that I talk to everyone who's considering it. Make sure it's your room, and then also I know that I'm doing an effective job if people are referring me to the right people. Like that's 100% where I'm coming from. But also, I really value everybody in the group, and I'm very comfortable to refer. And so, are all my KPIs in track? And am I, success for me is, am I so comfortable with everybody that I'm happy to refer the people I trust and know, and the people that trust and know me, and very easily do that time in and time out. So yeah, sure, there's a monetary component, absolutely, but I think that comes part and parcel with something that you're consistent with and something that you put effort and energy into. That money comes, right?
It's a byproduct. I agree
Yeah.
wholeheartedly. How has your business evolved since joining BNI, and what role has networking played in that growth, Tiffany?
Yeah, do you know what? It's probably evolved pretty significantly. When we started the business, we were actually focused on a particular market and probably placing one or two people with one client at a time. And in the last particularly 18 months, that's really shifted for us. We've recognized that we can do a significant amount of value or add a significant amount of value for businesses that are larger in size, corporates, kind of 30, 40, 50 plus people, where we can add multiple seats, but also they want to understand how they build high performing teams. And so the value we add from an education perspective really lands true. And that was really important when I selected this group as a new member was, are these people playing in that space? And I'm not worried about selling to the individuals in the group, but selling to their clients. And so who are they working with? And so that's probably been the biggest shift for us, is that we've almost changed our entire clientele process. And BNI has helped us do that and expose ourselves in the right areas. And it's also helped me fine tune the pitch and who it is that we want to speak to and who are the right clients for us. And sometimes you think that they're right and you get them and you go, that was awful. I don't want to do that again. Actually, I was wrong. That's not the ideal client for us as a company for various reasons. And so, yeah, BNI has absolutely helped us shape who we are as a company, that I have no doubt will lead us into the next several years.
And it's an interesting point you make around not necessarily doing business with people in the room, but rather their
100%.
customers or their their network as well. And I think a lot of people get caught up in the fact of, I go into a room and, oh my gosh, I look around, I can't really see too many people doing business. But the key is that you just don't know. You just don't
Yeah.
know who is doing business with other really cool businesses that potentially could be your ideal or dream client.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't sell the room. There's only, I don't know what the average chapter size is. We're almost 40.
Hmm.
Um, I'd be capped. I'd be
Hmm.
capped at 40 people, right? Don't sell to the room.
Hmm. What advice would you, other than that, what advice
Mm.
would you give to new BNI members to make the most out of their BNI membership?
Number one, if you haven't selected a chapter, please do your research. Don't go to the one that's most conveniently located to you and assume that that's the chapter for you. Go and shop around a little, because there's, like you mentioned at the start, there's significant changes in vibe and culture and people in every room you walk into. And sometimes they're just not your people, and that's okay, right? Or sometimes their goals aren't the same as your goals, and that's going to become problematic. So for me, I'm trying to address large corporate clients. If I went to a chapter that was smaller in size and were, potentially just running sole operations, they probably wouldn't be dealing with the same clients as me. And there's nothing wrong with it either. But you have to really identify who it is that you're trying to target and do the research. So as you walk into a group, take home the trade sheet, get in LinkedIn, have a look at who they're communicating with, get on their website, see who their ideal clients are and also who their current clients are, because that'll give you a better understanding as to whether, okay, actually, not only could I do work with their clients, but also I have clients that I know they would want to do work with. And I think that's one of the biggest things as well, because people are concerned when I speak to people, they go, oh, I don't know, the attendance is fine, but how could I possibly meet this KPI of a referral a week? It's not hard.
Hmm.
It's really not tricky, on the basis that you're approaching every conversation with a genuine desire to help.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, I now have access to nearly 40 people of experts, 40 experts, that I'm so confident in referring any one of the people I know to. And that is so fantastic that now people call me and say, Tiff, I know you know everyone in Brisbane. Who should I call? So it's not tricky if you go in with that givers gain approach, but absolutely pick your chapter, shop around if you have to, don't settle. If it's not a hell yes, get out of the room.
Great advice, Tiffany. What's next for your business? Any exciting projects or expansions on the horizon?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess we're already global, so that's comes naturally with this business,
So
right?
Mars or
Yeah, Mars, the moon, anywhere like that. We've got a few clients in the US, but for us, it's really about jumping into that corporate space really wide. And my big picture vision, Tony, is, when you think about the big four of banking, it's really clear and everyone can list them off pretty easily. But if I asked three people their top offshoring companies, I'd get none of the same answer. And so for me, it's how do we become the known brand and a big four in the offshoring world? And that's what we're building to.
it's an exciting mission. I love it. How do you see your relationship with BNI evolving, Tiffany, as your business grows?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's part and parcel. And I think because I've done the work to find the right group at the start, they're all growing with me, which is fantastic. And so I can't see myself changing from this role, or changing from using BNI as a resource for us to significantly grow our company.
Now, you shared some wisdom earlier for
Mm.
new members, but what about just general wisdom for people, whether in BNI or not? What would that be, Tiffany?
General wisdom.
Yeah,
How
just
long you got, Tony?
how long's a piece of string, right? One piece of business advice for people who are listening. What would that be?
It's just honestly, it's probably consistency.
Mm.
It's hard. It's tricky, and it's hard to show up day in, day out. But the only way you'll get results is consistency. And I read a quote the other day that said, "Don't stop now. You're already in pain, right? You might as well reap the rewards, and there will be rewards." But there's a reason why not everyone does it. So if you are in business, make sure you put yourself in the right rooms. Make sure you're super consistent. Make sure you keep showing up, and most importantly, do what you say you're going to do. And I think the rest just flows.
You're so right. It's that whole slow and steady wins the race. The tortoise and the hare. It says
Mm.
chip away, be consistent, keep showing up. I can't recall who said it, but success. About 80% of success is just showing up.
Yeah.
And it's just about putting yourself in that right position consistently. So wonderful advice. Thanks, Tiffany. How can listeners learn more about you or get in touch with you and your business?
Yeah, awesome. I'd love you to follow me on LinkedIn. I do a lot of content around global teams. So if you've got teams with us or not, or even if you've got people working with you locally and they're from a different descent, jump on to my LinkedIn, Tiffany English. You should find me there pretty easily. And also jump on our website. If you're looking at building your own offshore team or you're not so happy at how it's gone in the past, accessoffshoring.com.au. And probably my reminder from that is if you've tried offshoring and it hasn't worked, it's okay. There's 119 million other people we can try. So give it another go. Give it another go.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Tiffany. Really appreciate it. Well, look, that wraps up another episode of the BNI Effect. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion. I want to extend a massive heartfelt thank you to Tiffany English for sharing with us her insights and thoughts. If you found value in today's episode, then please don't forget to subscribe to the BNI Effect on your favorite podcast platform, and please leave us a review. Thanks for listening.